An unearthly presence breaches floor 70 of the Labyrinth. Cornu, a mystic leader in god-class armor, has come to assassinate Masayuki the hero. With the enemy vastly overpowering them, Venom, Minutes, and Caligulio form a desperate line of defense to buy time. But against an invincible foe, survival might depend on a risky decoy. AI Anime and Manga presents. If you're enjoying this story, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Channel members get early access to upcoming episodes, and that support helps cover AI narration, subtitles, thumbnails, and rendering. Now, back to the Labyrinth. As the mystic forces make their move, in another world, order could still be found. A semi-physical realm that overlapped with spiritual worlds like the elemental and demon worlds, yet never intersected with the ordinary world directly. That isolated world was ruled by three great forces. The mystics dreamed of invading other worlds, the insectors expanded their own domain under a strict hierarchy, and the cryptids, closer to spiritual life than physical flesh, spent their lives in endless battle and destruction. The mystics and insectors could build societies under kings, but the cryptids were violent individuals born from magicules, cunning enough to fight but too belligerent to cooperate. The three forces had no real way to coexist. The mystics and insectors had fought for nearly eternity, and whenever the cryptids multiplied out of control, even those bitter enemies would briefly unite to suppress them. That cycle repeated again and again. Because of that, all of them searched for a safer domain beyond their world. But invasion was not simple. Natural rifts in space opened only during rare space-time vibrations, once in a millennium and only for a short while. Sending an army through was impossible. There was one exception, a fixed-dimensional rift known as the Gates of Hell, or the Underworld Gate. Passing through it would make escape from that world easy, but the gate was controlled by the demons. The aggressors, those races trying to invade other worlds, were denied access. They constantly sought a way to seize it, but for the moment, the entire world remained in a tense deadlock. One person hated that balance more than anyone. His name was Feldway, the Mystic Lord. Feldway remembered everything. Veldanava created many species and races, but supporting the world was not a burden he carried alone. The angels were born to aid him, and among the highest angels, the Seraphim, 7 received names from Veldanava and became the 7 primordial angels. The first of them was Feldway. With that name came free will, and Feldway swore allegiance to Veldanava, serving him for many long years. Species multiplied across the world: giants, fairies, vampires, elves, dwarves, beastfolk, humans, and more. They evolved from spiritual forms to semi-spiritual forms, then to flesh and blood. They lost eternal life but gained diversity. Humanity delighted Veldanava most of all. Fragile, fertile, adaptable, curious, and deeply individual, they became the species he loved. So Veldanava chose to remove any threats that might prevent humans from surviving. Feldway obeyed, defeating monsters and dangers by his own hand. But one adversary remained: Ivalage, the world destroyer dragon, the being that would later become king of the cryptids. No one knew where Ivalage had come from. It was as powerful as a true dragon, yet lacked the intelligence to communicate. Its instincts alone could destroy the world. Even Feldway could not defeat it alone. Veldanava finally intervened and banished Ivalage to another world, assigning Feldway to watch over it. Feldway advised him to kill the monster before it created further trouble, but Veldanava refused. He believed Ivalage might one day gain intelligence. While they waited, Ivalage's magicules filled that world, and cryptids were born from them. They were lesser versions of Ivalage, living only to satisfy violent instincts. Feldway despised them, but he continued to subdue them whenever they ran wild. Then Veldanava's belief was partly proven right. A sentient being emerged from the cryptids, and Veldanava rejoiced, granting it a name. That was the birth of Zeranus, the insect lord. Zeranus began exterminating uncontrolled cryptids, not out of obedience, but because of his fighting instincts. Veldanava still approved. In time, Zeranus created his own insectors, and they grew into a faction. Feldway changed as well. Exposure to magicules transformed him from seraphim into something new, and the angels who followed him changed with him. Zerario, Obela, and Cornu had come down to that world with Feldway, while 3 of the 7 primordial angels remained by Veldanava's side. The 4 who had descended became mystic angels, and the lesser angels evolved into mystics, demons in human form, a new species unbound from the old conflict between demons and spirits. Over eons, Feldway and Zeranus formed a practical arrangement. They disliked each other, but both understood that the cryptids were a problem. The relationship was uneasy but useful. Then Veldanava disappeared. At first, everyone believed he would return immediately. Centuries passed and he did not. Feldway could not accept it. Perhaps, he thought, Veldanava had abandoned them. Otherwise, why had an immortal true dragon failed to return? The thought curdled into hatred. Humans, elves, dwarves, beastfolk, demons, all of humankind. To Feldway, all of them had taken Veldanava away from him. They did not deserve to live. He would unify Veldanava's world with his own hands, erase the diversity Veldanava had loved, and remake everything in his own colors. Feldway cried out to his god. If Veldanava wished to punish him, then let him hurry and do it, because otherwise his world would cease to exist. So Feldway acted as if testing the gods themselves. That was how the magic races, the eternal adversaries of mankind, were born. He first approached Zeranus, proposing that they join forces to destroy the cryptids and invade the planet beyond. Zeranus refused at once. There was only one being worthy of ordering him, and now that Veldanava was gone, he would do as he pleased. That answer enraged Feldway. If they had worked together, they might have destroyed Ivalage and the cryptids under it. Instead, Feldway turned his anger towards Zeranus and the world fell into chaos. The 3-way deadlock began. Many years passed. The stalemate remained. The fixed gate was still the only reliable path back toward the world where Veldanava had lived, and the demons still blocked it. Worst of all was Noir, a primal demon who seemed to exist for the joy of battle. Noir despised the mystic race as creatures of inferior magic, defying Veldanava's will. Feldway hated him in return, but destroying Noir was impossible. In the spiritual and semi-material worlds, will became power, and a primal demon in his own realm was almost invincible. Even Feldway knew that fighting him would settle nothing. So progress stalled. Then, when Feldway's frustration was reaching its limit, a voice spoke directly into his mind. The voice asked whether Feldway could hear it. Feldway demanded to know who it was. The answer was bitter. It called itself the will that lived within power. It was not yet free, and so, for the moment, it called itself Ludora. It had reached Feldway because it believed they shared the same goal. The name Ludora was familiar. It belonged to Veldanava's close friend, the original hero. Feldway did not know what this will within power truly was, but he listened. If its goal proved frivolous, he could always trace the voice and destroy it. Then the voice declared its mission, to restore Veldanava the creator, and nothing else. Feldway's eyes lit up. The voice belonged to Michael, Lord of Justice, an ultimate skill created by Veldanava. Feldway believed it because Michael knew private details only Veldanava would have known, so Feldway promised to cooperate. He told the voice they were comrades now. But calling it Ludora seemed wrong. He would call it Michael instead. That playful naming changed everything. Lord of Justice, which had only a faint awareness as a manas until then, developed a defined mind of its own. Michael thanked Feldway while still refusing to recognize him as true master. Once Michael regained all his powers from Ludora, his temporary master, he would grant Feldway a portion of them. Feldway found that interesting but suggested something else. Michael should be the master instead. Feldway's main body could not leave that realm while Zeranus remained in his way, and Zeranus would never trust Feldway. Michael, however, carried something that reminded Feldway of Veldanava. Perhaps Zeranus would listen. It worked. Michael somehow persuaded Zeranus, partly by assigning half of their world to the Insectors. Feldway accepted that loss. If Veldanava could be revived, nothing else mattered. More than 1,000 years passed. Ludora continued reincarnating, losing a little more power each time. After one reincarnation, Michael had nearly free reign to use his abilities, and Feldway saw the end drawing close. Once Ludora's influence vanished, Michael would control the angels and bend ultimate skill holders to his will. Obstacles like Velgrynd would become obedient allies. Even Guy Crimson might fall. Then Michael asked Feldway for a favor. He wanted Feldway to become his vessel. Michael had captured a parallel existence of Velgrynd. That would allow him to transport himself to Feldway while Ludora kept his powers as a decoy. And Castle Guard, one of Michael's greatest abilities, protected only the holder of Lord of Justice, fueled by loyalty to the Master. Ludora could protect himself, but not others. If Michael resided in Feldway, Castle Guard would protect Feldway too. Even more, if Ludora disappeared and Feldway became Michael's undisputed lord, the loyalty of more than 10,000 mystics would feed that defense. They were followers without free will, incapable of betrayal. The protection would be even more absolute than Ludora's. There was no reason to refuse. Feldway accepted, so long as their relationship stayed as it had been. Michael agreed. Thus Feldway obtained his own manas. Michael, Lord of Justice. At last, the ultimate battle arrived. Ludora was barely holding himself together, yet he chose to challenge Guy one final time. The plan was to eliminate the demon lord Rimuru, then add Veldora, a true dragon, to the arsenal. At first, everything went well. Velgrynd was overwhelming, and capturing Veldora looked within reach. To Feldway, the Empire's losses did not matter. Imperial Knight's awakening did not matter. What mattered was removing Ludora and releasing Michael. Once that happened, even Guy would no longer be a threat. But there was one uncertainty Feldway could not ignore. Masayuki the hero looked exactly like Ludora. Worse, he possessed Chosen One, an ability from Ludora's own arsenal. There was a non-zero chance that Masayuki was a spare, a substitute body for Ludora if something happened. Feldway moved to address that uncertainty. He had no idea that Rimuru, the demon lord he had not even considered an issue, would derail all of his plans. Michael, or the former Emperor Ludora, I guess, and Feldway the Mystic Lord were gone. The fight had not been settled, but both sides were too injured to continue. That left me with plenty of unresolved concerns. But for now, I wanted to celebrate the simple fact that we were all still alive. Plans could come later. Carolyn, Frey, and the others were still stuck in evolutionary sleep, so I arranged for Testarossa to escort them and politely sent them on their way. I apologized to Testarossa, knowing she had to be exhausted. Testarossa told me not to worry about them, and urged me to recover from my own fatigue first. It was painful advice to receive, but she was right. I could think about the rest once things settled down. First, I wanted to rev myself up with a little party. I hoped to invite Laplace, but when I sent Diablo to pick him up, Diablo reported that the guy was already gone. I guess even Diablo knew how to worry about his friends, at least a little. Our promise to fight together was still ongoing, so if Laplace ever needed help, I planned to give it. For now, though, I decided to leave him alone. Then I returned to the capital city of Rimuru and received unexpected news. One section of the town's outer border had been burned to the ground. Geld and his forces had defended the area at all times, so the damage was not as bad as it looked. Some surrounding buildings had been demolished to create fire breaks, keeping casualties to a minimum. The lack of fatalities was a huge relief, but it was not exactly pleasant news. No point panicking now, though. I would wait for Geld's report. Geld was not the only one waiting to brief me. We gathered in the large banquet hall. My top staff were seated, while Shuna, Haruna, and Gobichi's servants hurried around preparing meals. I was not thrilled about holding urgent reports in such a festive atmosphere, but we had little choice. Veldora was at my right side. He refused to move from that seat, and convincing him otherwise would be a waste of effort. Benimaru sat on my left. Shion and Diablo stood behind me, ready to listen. I knew Diablo would not care, but I wished Shion would at least dine with me. She insisted on eating later, apparently because of one of her self-imposed rules. Geld was in front of me. Adalman sat opposite Benimaru, looking a little different after his evolution. Ramiris was in front of Veldora, with Trainee and Beretta waiting behind her. Cheris poured Veldora's drinks while Ramiris stuffed herself, not exactly rushing to give a report.
Aww, I always knew you'd be all right, Master. when that reckless, no-good sister of yours blew apart the top levels of my labyrinth. I gotta admit, I wasn't exactly feeling good about our chances, but I still believed we'd be fine if you were around. I wasn't worried a single bit from the very start.
Ramiris said all of that with a straight face while enjoying her juice. It was truth mixed with bald-faced lies, but nobody pointed that out.
Quah, ha ha. But of course, even against my sister, I wasn't the slightest bit intimidated. I simply let my guard down a bit is all, and thanks to that cowardly intruder's attempt to strike me while I was down, my fight against her was completely spoiled.
Uh-huh. I definitely thought he was intimidated. The evolved Velgrynd really was a menace, and I would not give Veldora better than even odds against her. Why couldn't he hold off on the big talk for once? That was my opinion anyway. Veldora still received massive applause. Sheris solemnly said there was much he could learn from Veldora.
Truly a tremendous battle. I thought my evolution strengthened me, but now I know just how far I still need to go.
Benimaru's praise sounded genuine, which only made Veldora smile smugly. The good times ended when Ramiris opened her mouth again.
Aw, you're so careless sometimes, Master. Still, that's probably gonna be all right.
I asked what she meant by probably. Better to let sleeping dogs lie, I thought. Being too loose with your speech has a way of painting you into a corner.
Well, you know, with all that he's doing, but you're here now, Master, so I've got no worries at all.
He? That was disturbing.
What? Well, I am invincible, of course, but even I might not be fully on my game every single day.
Veldora seemed to understand what she meant. Suddenly, he began making excuses, perhaps realizing he had dug his own grave. It was too late for him, and this kind of thing always happened anyway, so I left him to it. I was more concerned with Bester in the corner. I ignored Veldora and his pals and asked the rest of my staff what had happened. Immediately after I left for the Empire, everyone who remained in Tempest went into emergency mode. The city's post-celebration excitement vanished, and Ramiris and her cohorts returned to the Labyrinth's innermost chambers. The Dragon Lords under Ramiris had completed their evolutions, which cheered her considerably, but my emergency deployment left her anxious. The Labyrinth was not just a tactical asset to her. After spending so long alone with only elemental spirit friends, it had become the paradise she never wanted to lose again. Her hunch proved right. Veldora's sister Velgrynd attacked and destroyed much of the labyrinth Ramiris took pride in. The structure was supposed to be physically indestructible, but a true dragon was a personification of unfair, irrational force. When Ramiris saw Velgrynd, she remembered old fears. Veldora was a living storm, but his sisters were just as unimaginable. Velgrynd's heat-driven power made her the worst possible match for him, and Velzard, the eldest, was even more terrifying in Ramiris's memories. So Ramiris worried for Veldora, flying circles around the control center.
Will you be all right, Master?
She meant it as an out, a way for Veldora to retreat without being blamed. Veldora ignored it.
Calm yourself. Just sit back and watch me act like the hero I am.
Somehow, he had shed every trace of anxiety. He strode out of the labyrinth with absolute self-assurance, and to Ramiris, who knew how he used to act, the sight was dazzling. After he left, Ramiris scanned the control center. Chiris was there, barred by Veldora from joining the fight. Beretta was calm as always, which helped settle her nerves. Trainee and her sisters, Traya and Doroth, stood nearby. Vester, Deeno, Shinji Tanamura, Mark Lauren, Zen Liu Xing, and their assistants Lucius and Raymond were present as well. With Ghidorah absent, the research staff were assisting Ramiris in wartime operations. Everyone looked apprehensive, so Ramiris tried to sound cheerful.
Come on, guys! I'm not worried one bit! I'm sure my master will win, and even if he doesn't, Rimuru will figure something out. It's a no-brainer. And besides, as long as he doesn't let his guard down, my master is invincible.
It was as much for herself as for them. Then things began happening. Alpha, the chief Dryad curator, shouted a warning. There was an intruder. Beretta ordered the monitor display, and the split screen showed a figure standing inside the labyrinth. Ramiris saw him first.
Oh, that's an angel. He's been both physically incarnated and transformed, but I have a feeling he's gonna be trouble.
The figure wore pure white and carried a dark, glossy god-class weapon. Long black hair shone like light, and 3 pairs of wings spread behind him. Alpha reported the estimated energy figures. The one at the front had more than 3 million existence points. The 5 behind him measured between 4 and 700,000. The entire control center froze. Existence points, or EP, were the labyrinth's attempt to quantify magicule count, physical ability, and equipment energy. The number did not measure honed skill, technique, or clever anomalies. Hakuro and Gapta had already proven that raw numbers could be misleading. Still, EP was useful for judging a rough threat level. 10,000 points marked the first major wall of strength. 100,000 meant calamity-level danger. Old-style demon lords might sit around several 100,000. Above 800,000 was Special S, and over 1 million meant the million class. So an intruder over 3 million was not a statistic to ignore.
A million class member. And if so, the first thing that comes to mind is that these are seraphim, aren't they?
Beretta agreed that a transformed high-level angel was very troubling. Even the followers behind him were S-class, and with the floor bosses asleep, engaging them would be difficult. Ramiris panicked. They had to do something.
Yes, we do, Lady Ramiris. Allow me to set off.
Treya and Dorith rose to join Trainee, but Ramiris only panicked more. She knew they had gotten stronger, but their stats were nowhere near the intruders.
That will not be a problem. One's EP is nothing more than a guide, and now we will prove just how strong your followers truly are.
Ramiris wanted to stop them. She loved Trainee and her kin, and sending them directly into danger felt wrong. She insisted that just like Rimuru and Veldora always told her, they should fight only battles they knew they could win. But Cheris warned that pure stalling would be too difficult. If they left the intruders alone, the labyrinth's vital facilities might be destroyed. He would join the interception, and Beretta would remain behind to protect Ramiris. Shinji and the others volunteered as well. They had resurrection bracelets. They were Imperial soldiers and researchers, but as long as Tempest was sheltering them, they wanted to return the favor. Lucius and Raymond agreed, not least because Ghidorah would be furious if they did nothing. The mood in the control center relaxed in a strange way, everyone talking as if the overwhelming enemy was not already standing inside the labyrinth. Ramiris took a deep breath and smiled.
Well, if that's what you all are saying, then have at it. Give me everything you got. As long as I'm around, you can die all you want, so don't go easy, you hear? And I'll send my dragon lords over when they're ready, so you better be sure you win for me.
Everyone nodded, accepted their roles, and moved into action. The intruder was Zerario, leader of the forces directly under Feldway. A former Seraphim, he ruled as one of the 3 mystic leaders alongside the other army commanders of the mystics. Normally, he would never appear on the front lines, but Feldway had given explicit orders. Take advantage of Velgryn's devastation of the labyrinth and eliminate the assigned target. Zerario brought 5 generals with him, high-level angels who had become mystics. In the labyrinth's environment, where natural magic force diffusion was suppressed, they could fully leverage their abilities. As Zerario descended, the space around him shifted into a closed, empty battlefield. Trainee, Cheris, the Dragon Lords, Treya, and Dorith appeared before him. Zerario remarked that they were being welcomed and should be courteous. Trainee stepped forward, smiling with her lips but not her eyes.
It is nice to meet all of you. My name is Trainee, and on behalf of Lady Ramiris, the master of this labyrinth, I will work with you, along with Cheris and my other associates. Now, with that in mind, I don't remember inviting anyone here, but may I ask who you are and what you want?
She was ready for anything. Trainee had powered herself up as much as possible, calling on a wind elemental lord housed within her rather than the high-level elemental she had used against Laplace. It was a burden her body could barely bear, but inside the labyrinth she could resurrect. She was pulling out all the stops from the first move. Cheris, 1 step behind her, was also ready. He had trained under Veldora and trusted the allies around him. The Dragon Lords were eager to test their evolved power. Treya and Doroth had completed spiritual unification with Sylphide. Beretta could not leave Ramiris, so this was the best lineup the Labyrinth could assemble. If they lost, everyone else would have to make a last stand. Rigurd, Gobta, and the others were already gathering forces for that possibility. But no one here was planning to lose. Zerario introduced himself with a graceful bow. He was Zerario of the 3 mystic leaders, entrusted with an army by the mystic lord Feldway. Trainee answered with measured politeness, saying she had not heard the name before. Zerario smiled and admitted that she likely had not. He and his kind were well known in other worlds, but they had been away from this one for a long time. They must seem like an alien presence here. Trainee asked what he wanted. Zerario calmly explained his objective: eliminate a boy named Masayuki Honjo. If they handed Masayuki over, he would withdraw at once. No one considered agreeing. Masayuki was Rimuru's friend and an irreplaceable companion to Trainee and the others.
Ridiculous. I fear there is no room for negotiation.
Zerario said that was a pity, while making it clear he felt no pity at all. Then the fight began. Trainee moved first, launching countless unseen blades from above. Invisible Blade was not just compressed air. It carried the air elemental attribute and could shear through dimensions. But Zerario did not move. The blades vanished before touching him. A distortion in space covered the surface of his body, similar to spatial defensive zones recorded in the Labyrinth database, the kind Zegian excelled at devising. It nullified elemental attacks and even handled ruptures in space. Trainee and Cheris recognized how nasty that was. Zerario, still perfectly calm, noted that they seemed familiar with the skill and asked about the Zegian they had mentioned. He had been told all of this nation's top leaders were out of the picture, so perhaps his intelligence was faulty. His face remained cool. He was not taking them seriously yet, and he seemed to savor that. Trainee exchanged glances with Karis and changed her approach. Instead of trying to defeat him by force, they would stall for time. That was wise. Zerario's 5 generals were struggling against the Labyrinth forces. The Dragon Lords had trained constantly, and they were fighting on home turf where Tempest's side was effectively immortal. If they kept the momentum, perhaps they could dispatch the followers and work together to crack Zerario's defense. But Trainee could not shake her uneasiness. Zerario was too calm for a general watching his own side lose ground. Then she understood. His mission was to eliminate Masayuki. If Masayuki was the only target, assassination would be easy. Zerario's overwhelming EP had distracted them from that possibility. Trainee contacted Ramiris by thought communication and asked where Masayuki was. Ramiris answered that he was safe. He was in the city helping guide evacuees. Masayuki's presence was calming the citizens, and without him, panic might have delayed the evacuation. His innate skills were doing exactly what they did best. Trainee was relieved but not satisfied. If the enemy tried to take Masayuki's life among the evacuees, civilians could be caught in the crossfire. Ramiris agreed to move Masayuki and his group to floor 70. That floor housed the surviving Imperial forces, and even if assassins appeared, the soldiers there could buy time. So Masayuki was dispatched to floor 70. Masayuki sighed to himself. People around here treated him with no respect at all. From Rimuru on down, the big shots acted on whatever whim popped into their heads. He wished they would consider his opinion the way Shuna did. If an elegant, beautiful woman like Shuna asked him to do something, he would have no complaints. That was why he had gladly helped with the evacuation. But now Ramiris had ordered him to floor 70 immediately without hesitation. Masayuki was not excited about it. Ramiris knew his secret, had Veldora's backing, and held plenty of power herself. There was no way he could defy her. Venom, walking with him, told him to give it up. Lady Ramiris did not mean anything bad by it. They were stretched thin. Veldora himself had gone out to fight, and it was an emergency no matter how you sliced it. Venom was not exactly an honor student type. He wore a snake-shaped earring, a rugged watch, a skull ring, a sickly purple shirt, a spiked leather jacket, and shiny black leather pants. It was punk fashion through and through. Masayuki usually would not get along with someone like that. But strangely, the two had hit it off. That was probably because Venom had also gone through a lot. According to him, his bosses were always forcing impossible jobs onto him. Masayuki felt a kind of kinship with him. As Venom put it, he had no human rights. Now Venom was Masayuki's bodyguard by order of those bosses. Masayuki had not seen Jiwu or Bernie since everything happened, and meeting them would have been awkward. He had parted ways with Jinrai too because his whole life was one big bluff and he could not guarantee his friend's safety. Jinrai had taken work with Tempest Guild instead, offering behind-the-scenes support. It made Masayuki lonely, but also relieved. At least he no longer had to lie to his own friend. Then Venom appeared. Venom knew exactly how weak Masayuki really was, protected him anyway, and actually listened. Since Venom's orders were to cooperate so Masayuki's reputation did not get tarnished, Masayuki was happy to take advantage. They quickly built a strange friendship based on trust. Masayuki complained that a hero figure like him should not be actively running away from everyone in town. Venom answered bluntly. Masayuki was a wimp. If the enemy attacked, he could not do anything. Masayuki knew that, but it still felt wrong. The anxious gazes of the evacuees bit into him. They did not say it, but he could feel them pleading. Don't go. To Venom, the issue was simpler. Floor 70 was probably safer than Floor 100. The surviving Imperial forces were there and the overcomer vampires were watching the children. Once Masayuki arrived, he could come under their protection. Venom's top priority was the mission Diablo had given him, protect Masayuki, even at the cost of his life. He admitted that Masayuki's presence reassured people, but the evacuation was almost complete and Floor 100 was well protected. Practically speaking, if an enemy powerful enough to reach them appeared, only the floor bosses could stop it. Floor 60 was mostly undefended, so Floor 70 was now the first line. Masayuki realized that meant he might actually be in more danger there. Venom nodded. He supposed so, but he was there and it was his job to protect him. Masayuki understood. If he was being moved to the front in this situation, some enemy was likely targeting him specifically. Otherwise, there was no reason to expose a helpless man like him to more danger. His resurrection bracelet would revive him after any death in the labyrinth, so perhaps Ramiris was using him as bait. Venom agreed that she probably did not want civilians caught in the fight, and joked that they might also find out how much of a wimp Masayuki was. Masayuki had one more problem. Jiwu and Bernie were on Floor 70. Venom told him not to hate them too much if they were only following orders. Even if they had tried to kill him, they probably did not really want to deep down. Humans were complicated that way, and that was what made them such great toys for demons. Masayuki glared at him. He could not move on that easily, but even he could not fully hate Jiwu and Bernie. Dwelling on it would only hurt. So once they reached Floor 70 and saw the construction site where the Imperial forces were stationed, Masayuki resigned himself to his fate. He told Venom to stop using him as a toy too. Venom smiled, knowing Masayuki was not truly angry. Protecting him was a duty, but Venom liked him personally as well. They were both nervous pessimists by nature, and Venom respected the guy. Masayuki might look like a twig carried by a river, but he still kept a fierce sense of self-will. Venom thought of himself as a born rebel, yet something told him he could not hold a candle to Masayuki. Venom started laughing, about to jab back, then froze. A presence appeared in front of them. Venom stepped up to protect Masayuki and demanded to know who the intruder was. The figure ignored him, looking at Masayuki with annoyance. There was something unearthly about him. 3 pairs of folded wings rose from his back, emphasizing a powerful masculine physique. Pale skin exposed chiseled muscle. But the most striking feature was his gaze. Sinister, ghastly, like a wounded carnivore. Venom shouted at him not to ignore him and unleashed a high roundhouse kick toward the man's temple. But the intruder took the kick without defending, as if there was no need to react. He introduced himself as Cornu, one of the 3 mystic leaders, and spat his contempt for demon races who had meddled with the mystics since time immemorial. Then he swung an arm toward Venom. A compressed wave of magic force gouged into Venom at unavoidable speed. Masayuki hurried to Venom's side and asked if he was okay. Venom was alive. He had reacted just in time to deflect the bolt with his left arm, but the damage was horrible. His left arm was gone, and there was a large hole in his side. Venom admitted that he was not okay. Cornu was way stronger than he was, but he still promised to protect Masayuki. Then he stood back up. Cornu sneered at the obstinate little bug wasting everyone's time with pointless resistance. Masayuki wanted to tell him off. He did not know why anyone wanted him killed so badly, and Venom had been hurt because of him. Venom guessed that Cornu was after Masayuki. He had suspected it from the moment Ramiris contacted him. He might not be able to beat Cornu, but he could buy time. Then Venom explained the key point. Cornu had probably avoided killing Masayuki because of the resurrection bracelet. If Masayuki died, he would resurrect somewhere else. Cornu was afraid of losing him that way, so he was trying to bring Masayuki out of the labyrinth alive. That meant Cornu would avoid attacks that might catch Masayuki in their range. Venom smiled defiantly, and he was right. Masayuki's resurrection point was set to the control center so no one would see where he went. Knowing that emboldened him. Cornu, annoyed that his motives had been exposed, had good reason to avoid further mistakes. Decades earlier, during an attempted invasion of another planet, he had ruined everything one step before completion. A field of blazing fire had reduced his army to cinders. He still retained his Mystic Leader title, but no subordinates were assigned to him anymore, and while his wounds had healed, the sadness and despair remained. So despite his overwhelming advantage, Cornu felt like he was dancing on a cliff. Venom noticed. Cornu admitted that if this were not Ramiris' world, burying both of them would be child's play. Since it was, he would let them taste genuine despair first. Then he formed armor over his body, black and gold light radiating from it. It was God-class gear, the same type Zerario possessed, available only to the 3 mystic leaders. Facing a fully armed Cornu, Venom had no moves left. No attack would scratch him. Running would be pointless. Once Venom fell, Masayuki would be taken away and executed. Venom would resurrect too, but failing to protect Masayuki meant facing Diablo's purge afterward. Venom thought hard, nearly ready to cry. There was only one option left: kill Masayuki himself and send him to the safe resurrection point. He began to commit to it. Then 2 men stepped forward to shield Masayuki. One asked whether there was trouble and whether they could lend a hand. Masayuki recognized them as Minutes and Caligulio, both men of high standing in the Empire. Minutes told Masayuki to simply call him Minutes. Having His Majesty the Emperor's spitting image call him Sir made him feel self-conscious. Caligulio, stern face partly obscured by a patch over his left eye, smiled and said seeing Masayuki made his heart soar, as if His Majesty himself were witnessing his exploits. He felt more powerful than ever. Minutes turned to Venom and offered backup. An invisible force field deployed, slowing Cornu's movements. It was Oppressor, the unique skill Minutes had supposedly lost. Venom asked whether he had lost his powers. Minutes replied that he had. But once you got something the first time, the second time was far easier. Caligulio envied him. He had lost his omnipotence, but at least he could still store magicules in his empty body. Power surged through him to the point that blood seeped from his pores. His life would be in danger before long, but in the labyrinth he had an unlimited use resurrection bracelet from parts unknown. The damage did not bother him. Venom saw hope in the 2 of them. They were not alone. Several other men had joined in as well. 3 overcomers, rehabilitated vampires who had come out of curiosity. Venom accepted their help immediately. He told them not to worry about killing Cornu, just stop him. Caligulio took command and no one objected. 5 fighters supported Venom and attacked Cornu together. Cornu raged at them, calling them garbage, but he did not lose his cool. He tried to eliminate them one by one while making sure Masayuki could not escape. Surprisingly, the hastily assembled team worked amazingly well. The Overcomer's immortality, Cornu's inability to use wide-area attacks, Caligulio's judgment, and everyone's bravery combined to bridge the impossible difference in power. Venom and the others successfully stalled for time. And as they did, Bernie called out to Masayuki. He told him to come over, and quickly. If they reached the lab, they could travel to other floors from there. Masayuki reacted to seeing Bernie and Jiwu. Bernie apologized. He wanted to do it more formally, but now was not the time. Masayuki needed to follow him. Jiwu, however, stood frozen, casting a magic spell. Bernie asked what she was doing. Jiwu told them not to worry. She would pretend to be Masayuki and confuse Cornu. By the time she turned toward Masayuki, she looked exactly like him. Bernie urged Masayuki to move. Cornu was holding back attacks against him, and Jiwu could defend herself well enough. They had to leave while they had the chance. That was the plan Bernie and Jiwu had made on the way over. The rest of the team kept Jiwu hidden from Cornu's sight while she transformed. Masayuki hesitated, but only for a moment. He agreed. He would only be a drag on everyone there anyway.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.